welcome to this week's edition of the Bombercast, fresh off a round one win against the old Wheeze and Poos. Always a great time, always a great way, I should say, to start the year with a win against the old rivals, especially in remembrance of the 84 Premiership. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and fellow Bomber supporter, Bonta34. Bonts, how are you?
I'm good, mate. You're right. It is always nice to get off to a winning start to the season. I think we normally do seem to get off to a winning start lately. It feels like we're pretty good early on in the season. So, yeah, no, happy to get the win.
Yeah, we're good whenever we play Hawthorne in round one. Like if we play someone else like Geelong or something, we generally get smashed. But Hawthorne,
Yeah, no, you're right. We did play Geelong that year, and we were up and about, and then it was over by quarter time, and that was a bit deflating, wasn't it?
yeah,
But
yeah. But we beat our Hawthorn round one last year. So if the AFL want to keep this running, I'm more than happy to keep it going. Obviously, the Bombers, if you don't know the score, cover your ears. Otherwise, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast. The Bombers beat Hawthorn 107 17-5 to 83 11-17. I think a game that was, I don't think 4 goals probably befitted the contest in the sense that I think Hawthorn were up to their necks in it right up until maybe 15 minutes left in the game. Essendon was saved probably by two things. One is Hawthorn's goal kicking, which was horrendous, but also our own forwards, I think, were ridiculously accurate from set shots. And as always, bad kicking is bad football. But for us, that's good. And Bond's plenty of positives to take out of this week.
yeah, I mean, our forward line did start really well. And it's always good to see Peter Wright thumping them from outside 50. Because that obviously means he's a fairly good touch. So I was pretty happy with that. I thought we started well in the middle. Interestingly, I did read that we actually lost the first touch battle in the midfield. So Goldstein had an absolute day out, as you would have hoped he'd have a day out, I guess, against Ned Reeves. But despite that, we actually didn't get our hands on the ball first all that often, apparently. Yet we still managed to tie the clearances around the ground and actually won the centre clearance battle. So it was interesting that I thought, and I think one of the most pleasing things for me was the clearances weren't just dominated by Z Merritt. So you'd normally expect, obviously, when Darcy Parish isn't playing, that we just rely on Merritt to have 15 clearances and try and drag us across the line. But, Perkins had 8, Setterfield had 7, Durham had 5, Sardis had 4, and obviously Zach had 6, so he still played in there. But I thought the midfield spread was very impressive.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be fascinating if Darcy gets up this week to see what they do with the midfield battle. And I've been one of Darcy's strongest fans, strongest supporters, I should say, just because I think what he does is really good. But you just saw with a different mix, and particularly a bigger mix. So Hawthorn have quite a big midfield when you think of James Walpole and John Newcomb and the bigger guys that have run through there. Josh Ward's really talented, and Ken McKenzie's another bigger bodied guy. So I think it was interesting that we threw Perkins and Setterfield in there quite a bit, and we tended to sort of match them pretty well. And Sammy Durham sort of scrapped and scraped all day, which we knew he would. We won the clearances by 9, 40-31, but we won centre clearances by 9, 18-9. So we've always been a good centre clearance team. I don't think that's ever been a problem when we're 3-on-3. The problem is around the ground, we can sort of get out muscled. So to break even in that probably went a long way against their midfield, because their midfield, for all their ball winning, aren't great in transition defense. Neither are ours. And we'll get to that probably later on from that first half. But I thought the midfield was really well rounded. I think Archie Perkins obviously stole the show with a couple of goals, but otherwise, Setterfield 24, Perkins 24, Sammy Durham had 16 and a bunch of clearances. Caldwell rotated through there. He had a quiet first half, but came good sort of in the last quarter and a half, including a couple of a ripping goal from outside 50. So it was a really well-rounded battle, I think, in midfield, and that went a long way with Darcy out. That was always, you were never going to replace him one for one in terms of output. You did have to share it amongst them, and I think they did that pretty well.
Especially that last quarter. So last quarter was obviously when we got on top. I thought around the ground. And you look at the clearances last quarter, and Caldwell had 3, Perkins had 2, Setterfield 2, Sardis 2. Even, Guelphy had a clearance in there. McGrath had a clearance when he went in briefly. And the thing that stood out was Merritt actually didn't have a clearance at all in the last quarter. The last quarter, Zach actually went for 12 meters gained negative. So he actually lost yards in that last quarter with his 7 disposals. So Yeah, I think we stood up in that last quarter, not in spite of Zach, but we didn't do it with him as much as we probably have in the past. So I was pretty happy with how that last quarter played out. But the other pleasing thing that came out for me on it, we did touch on earlier, was the goal kickers there. So, Peter Wright had a couple. Jakey Stringer in his contract year, as we all expected, had a blinder kicking four. Especially though, I love the one where he went back. I think he's about 50 meters out and went back and pretended to have a look. Oh, I'll have a look. I'll have a look, and then quickly ran around to his right, slammed it home.
Never
You always
passing,
knew it was
never
going to
passing.
happen.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. He was never going to pass that off. Kyle Langford had a very quiet first half. He concerned me a little bit because I was going, geez, he just doesn't look like he's in form. Kicked three in the second half to come home strong. Guelphy kicked two to prove me wrong, as I was talking about him last week. Uh, Although I will just point out with Guelphy, he had 12 touches, kicked two goals, six scoring involvements, did also have six clangers. So it seemed a little bit boom or bust with Matt on the weekend. And then obviously, as I said, Peter Wright had a couple, and you mentioned Perkins. So the goal kickers, I think, spread it well, and it's good to have a forward line that's functioning on more than just one level.
Yeah, and what I really liked was how mobile the forward line looked, not having a second ruckman in the team. So we had Peter Wright as sort of the nominal key forward, and then a bunch of sort of more mobile options. I just saw Matt Guelphy. It cannot be understated the job he did on James Sicily defensively. Like James Sicily had nowhere near the input he normally does, particularly as an interceptor. And I think Matt Guelphy did a fantastic job checking him off ball, drawing him out to places where Sicily couldn't impact the contest. So I just thought he'll miss this week to an injury, which just sucks because I think he played really well. He did have six clangers, but you take that with Guelph because the other stuff he does. I just really like the look of our forward line when it was more mobile. So Harry Jones had a dirty day, but he was still probably more mobile than that additional ruckman. He did, so he had some good chasing efforts, but we'll probably get to him as a negative soon because the output just wasn't there. It
Uh,
was, and I'm not defending him. He's sort of, what is he? He's year five now. You can't be you can't be in the team for three or four good chases as a key forward in year five. I'm sorry, the young player tag doesn't apply anymore. I don't know where you sit on it with that, but we'll
Let's
get
jump
to.
into Harry now. Let's
Oh,
jump into
okay,
Harry
sure.
now because I think you and I think it's safe to say not only on here but probably on the board. You and I have had some spirited discussions about Harry Jones and how we see his role in the team. And look, you're right in saying that the young player tag doesn't apply anymore. I was arguing it didn't apply last year. I was arguing last year essentially that he was running around not getting into the ball and he wasn't. And he did it again on the Saturday. And he does run really well, and I get all that. But as I said last year, and I've been saying it for a while, and as you just said, then it's not good enough for a key forward. I mean, he had four touches, took one mark, and didn't hit the scoreboard. Like three of his touches were handballs. So for a key position forward to have one mark, one kick, it's just not good enough. And this determination to play him when he's clearly not up to it at AFL level now, because the biggest problem Harry's got, I think, is he's never had an extended run at VFL level. If he's not playing AFL, he's
He's not
injured.
playing. Yeah, that's
You,
correct.
you get what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm not going to rehash the arguments that we've had before and the arguments we've made before because I think we're on the same page now. So there's no point doing all that rubbish. But this idea that he has to play, and this is an idea coming from the coach's box, which I just don't understand that he has to play because their structure has to have this mobile key. It's just bizarre because if he's not doing it, if he's not getting the ball, he's not worth having out there. I don't care how much he drags a player away or he isolates Peter Wright or Kyle Langford. If you're not touching the ball, you shouldn't be out there. You got to get back to VFL and actually get your hands on the pill. Go back for an extended period, kick 20 goals in 6 or 7 weeks at the VFL level, then come back up and have another crack at the AFL. But this whole attitude our coaches have got that, we've got our structure and he's part of our structure and we must play him, therefore he stays in the side. I don't understand. I didn't understand it last year. I don't understand it now, and I probably never will.
So I didn't hear Brad Scott use that structure analogy or excuse this year.
That's my words though,
Okay,
really, Rich. I
right.
mean,
Okay.
because
So
that's always been the argument from Brad Scott in his press. He hasn't said it this year, but he did say it last year that Harry brings structure, but
yeah.
how
So
much how much is structure versus actually kicking goals, which is the ultimate job of a forward.
Yeah, okay. So my view is if he's going to give us 4 disposals and 3 handballs, we might as well play Draper forward. Like, because Draper will at least give us that, and he gives us a better chop out in the ruck than Wright does. So if that's the level of input we're going to accept, I would rather just have a second ruckman because that gives us a greater benefit around the ground of keeping our ruckman fresh. I think last year the young play tag did apply just because he was less than 30 games and 4 years in, but he's on a 1 year deal now. He's 23. It's sort of make it or break it at this point in terms of output. And the thing that I would argue now is that he has competition. So we have Nate Caddy, who's in the wings, who's probably only going to play a couple of VFL games. If he shows anything, might take Jones's spot. You've got Sam Wiedemann, who, I know if there's one player Essendon fans want to see less than Harry Jones, it's probably Sam Wiedemann. But again, if we're accepting 4 disposals as an output, we can get that and get additional benefits elsewhere. I'm not dropping him this week unless Draper is 100% rock hard fit. But if he gives us this again, then I can't see any reason to keep him in the team. I just think, and I don't want to talk too much about Harry because so much other good things happened on Saturday that we don't have to worry about him too much. But I think we're both aligned in that. Aside from Harry, the forward line worked well, but that's just not going to cut it going forward, I think. But the other thing I just wanted...
the other thing about Harry is there's now talk about moving him back. I mean, when you start talking about, maybe we should play someone back, we should take him out of their natural position and move him somewhere else, you start to think that maybe they're not going to cut it at this level. Yeah, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Jaden Hunter went down with an ACL has helped Harry probably start the year, but like I said, that output it can be replaced elsewhere. But I hope he comes good because I like Harry, and that flash in his first 4-foot season was really cool. But you can't survive on flashes 3 years ago for very long. The one thing I just want to talk about was Nick Martin as well. So he giveth and taketh away. He had some outstanding moments with the ball in hand, and he had a couple of absolute shockers. There was that kick in that he grubbed along the ground for about 15 meters. But then he had some exquisite kicks going inside 50. Yeah, I don't know if this halfback thing is going to work because I think we are jeopardized on the defensive, and I'll get to that in a second after we finish talking about all the good things we want to talk about. But it was an interesting look to have that sort of creativity off halfback. I don't know what your view is on whether you just rather that creativity in the forward half, where you probably get more bang for your buck. But with Redmond down, I suppose we'll probably see more of him in the back line just because we need that run and gun and that good ball use outside defensive 50.
So we probably will definitely have to see him there again this week because we just don't have a choice, I think, with Redmond going down. I mean, Nick Hind could come in for Redmond, I guess. But look, my view on Nick is pretty strong. I just think we're wasting our time. I think it's silly to play him in the back line. The whole thing at the moment is apparently the argument is, well, we'll play him in the half back line, and then Jake Kelly will play on the wing, and he'll come back to cover him, or whoever's on the wing, they'll come back and cover what we lose defensively because of Nick Martin. That to me, Kane, I just don't understand why. I mean, why wouldn't you have a defender down back and play Nick Martin on the wing and have him do what he did last year? Because the thing is, right, if we wanted to have an unaccountable backman with great skills, we had one in Massimo D'Ambrosio, who we saw on the weekend do that. He was an unaccountable backman who torched us with his brilliant skills. And yet we let him go because he's got no defensive skills, and then we move Nick Martin. And Nick Martin not having defensive skills is not new. I said last year after the King's birthday Eve game against Carlton that a couple of times I watched him at the G, and he just got burnt defensive. It's not something new. It's not something we didn't know. We already knew this. And I get the idea is that but we haven't put him back for his defensive skills, and that's fine. But you can't play a defender who doesn't defend. And that's what we're doing at the moment. I mean, Collingwood get away with it with Nick Dacos because their system is better. And no disrespect to any of our players, Darcy Moore is an absolute freak who controls the ground exceptionally well. For all the laugh about Nick Maxwell and he didn't touch the ball, all that sort of stuff when he was defender, Collingwood have always had a general down back. And at the moment, apparently, it seems like our general is Dyson Heppel, who, again, I love Heps, But let's be honest, we're covering him defensively too. So
Mm.
all of a sudden, we're not just covering one, we're covering two. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
just
think
doesn't make sense.
the nuance on the Dacos slot role is lost. I think Dacos never starts in defense.
No, and that's
So,
exactly
so,
and that's exactly
so,
the point. Yeah,
so, so when there's this misnomer about the Dacos role, and you just plonk this sort of unaccountable attacking player at halfback, let him run rampant, let someone else cover his man. He rarely ever starts sort of centre bounce or in structure at halfback manning someone. Like he nominally starts as a halfback in the sense
yeah,
that he might start defensive side of a defensive stoppage, or he might start there on the defensive wing and then push forward. But he doesn't play as a defender. Like there's this misnomer. I know David Keegan likes to talk about it, but I wouldn't throw that out. I wouldn't trust the analysis as far as I could throw it. You watch him and he's never in the back line as a defender, which is what we're sort of asking Nick to do to start with. Look, he played really well for the most part. He had a couple of clangers, whatever, move on. But I wonder, there's diminishing returns, I think, playing that sort of playoff halfback when he can be so much more damaging, I
yeah,
think, in the
yeah,
forward
yeah,
half. But
yeah,
just one more other thing I want to talk about, which was really cool. I mentioned it before. The recruits, sorry, I didn't mention it before, but the recruits I thought played really well. I thought Dersma did a good job as a defensive winger at times. Got back and helped out. I thought Goldie was outstanding, as you mentioned. I thought Ben Mackay, I think, had 6 intercept possessions, took a ton of contested marks. With Reed going down, he really was our only sort of pure tell down there, and I thought he played really well.
yeah. I did like the recruits. I thought Reed probably look. I was going to say he probably showed why we gave him the contract. He did. The contract he's got is probably larger than a player of his quality deserves. But at the same time, he did play exceptionally well on the weekend. I think you're right. I think Dersma was good. Goldie, as I said, dominated Ned Reeves as you would hope, and Goldie actually got around the ground fairly well. I think he only had about 9 touches, but he still got around the ground pretty well. He did a couple of nice little handballs, and he even sold some candy at one point, which was beautiful to watch. And the other recruit, obviously, there's is Jade Gresham, who I thought was exceptional for his role. So he kicked it. Yeah, I think he kicked, yeah, 1 goal. He had 12 touches, and you look at that and go, it was okay. But it's his first game amongst those guys, and I thought he was in the right spot a lot of the time when that ball came in. So I thought he was front and center, exactly where you want a small forward to be. I just think that on the weekend, our blokes sort of clunked. The big boys clunked a lot more than maybe they normally would. So I think we're very close to seeing a Jade Gresham game, which just makes us sit back and go, yeah, this is why we got him, and this is why St Kilda were disappointed to lose him, although they were happy with the draft pick they got for him.
Yeah, I think I probably would disagree on the level of his how good his game was. I thought he was solid. A couple of soft efforts in the tackle, but we'll get to negatives in a second, and that's one of mine generally, which is the first half defensively. Bonts was a bit of a worry. A lot of missed tackles, a lot of broken tackles. There was one point where McGrath got caught running the ball out of defensive 15. It looked horrible, but what people sort of failed to mention was that 30 seconds beforehand, Luke Bruce broke a tackle with two Essendon guys jumping on him to get the handball away for a missed shot at goal. So, we had at one point, the defensive transition was really bad. I think there was one point, Jack Dinovan's first goal, he ran straight past Perkins and Caldwell, who were sort of jogging in space to get free in the pocket. No one picked him up. Just, I said in the game day thread, don't talk to me about 8-year plans until you can improve on your defense from one year to the next. Luckily that for us, I think the defensive intent did improve in the second half. We had a couple of rundown tackles. Stringer almost got another one that led to a goal. It was an improved second half in terms of the defensive intensity, but boy, it looked shaky early.
Yeah, the McGrath one was interesting because I think the bigger problem I had with that one was Ben Mackay, and as much as we said he was good, he stood about 5 meters in front of McGrath, didn't
Yeah.
tell him he was hot, didn't try and put a shepherd on, and as a result, it was I was sort of left a bit bemused by all that whole passage of play. But I am probably going to disagree slightly into where you say it was the first half, because I thought the third quarter was pretty fucking appalling too,
Sure.
if I'm being
Okay.
honest.
Yeah.
I I think we finally got our shit together come the last quarter, but I thought the first three quarters were pretty average. I mean, let's be honest, Hawthorne had what they have 28 scoring shots, and they're not a great side.
No.
So if we give 28 scoring shots, to Sydney this weekend, we're going to get absolutely torched.
Oh.
So
Ooh.
um, yeah, I was pretty upset with it, but I suppose you're right. It did improve as the game went on. Perkins and Caldwell and those kind of boys, they sort of got more involved as they got their hands dirtier as the game went on. And if they can turn up and keep that intensity up from the bounce instead of just halfway through the third quarter, then I think we're in for a much better showing than what we showed on the weekend, despite the fact we obviously won.
Yeah, I walked away from that first. You're right, probably half of the third quarter going, man, if we play like this against Sydney, we're going to be down by 60 points before we can blink the way they were carving up Collingwood and Melbourne the week before that. But I don't know whether it's a personnel thing, whether our guys just aren't geared to defend from. The thing is, they go through these periods where their pressure is intense. You just go, where is that all the time?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, if you did this all the time, we would be a really good team because we do have the speed on the outside and we do have the ball magnets that when the ball's in dispute, if we can cause enough chaos, we're actually pretty good. But when it's just when we're trading defensive transition to defensive transition, which seems to be our tactic, like Hawthorne are really aggressive with their ball movement. So when they find an option and they hit it, it looks really bad because they are super aggressive. When they turn it over, they get scored on heavily, which is again what we did. But I don't know. My view on it is it's got to be better than that. I think we should probably get and our defensive sort of fortitude depends on enough pressure coming down. And I think we'll get to our defense now. And another negative is obviously the injury to Zach Reed. The news came down today. I think it's a 4 to 6 weeker. Someone said that's pretty severe for a hamstring awareness. I don't think any soft tissue injury for Zach from here on in is going to be minor. Just with the way his body seems to break down, it's a real shame because he looked great over pre-season, and you and I both said successful year this year for him is just getting through 15 to 20 games. It's just a rotten start for Zach.
Yeah, so Scott basically said the same thing on 360 that, from now on we're always going to take a cautious approach with him. And it does it starts into Scott Gumbleton territory a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As good as he is and as much as the talent he had, because we all saw that Gumby had the talent. I still remember there was a game 2013, I think, or 2012, whatever it was, and I think he kicked 4 against the Saints and looked like a superstar. And then next week did his hamstring. I don't think he ever played for us again. So, it's starting to get that way with Zach because unfortunately his body's just not holding up. Which considering considering the draft capital we spent on him, it's extremely disappointing for him. It's also incredibly disappointing for us. Yeah, and I'm not saying that's anyone's fault because obviously you can't predict these things. It's just the way of life, unfortunately. We said earlier, Guelphy's gone down injured, so that's also a bit of an issue because he played well on the weekend. So yeah, big couple of negatives in the injury department to come out. I suppose the good thing, if you really had to say the good thing to come out of it, I suppose is I think we just slot Laverde back there instantly. It gives Cox a bit more of a chance, and I thought Cox looked pretty good, to be honest, as a defender when he was down there. A lot of talk about he doesn't like body contact, and yeah, I generally agree with that normally, but I actually thought he was actually pretty good on the weekend. Gunston outpointed him at one point, and there's been a bit of a talk that it was a really soft effort. I think that was explained. I can't remember who explained it well, but somebody basically said, it wasn't really soft. It was just more the fact that the bloke who's got 200 games and 400 goals at AFL level was in the better spot and just outpointed him. And it's something Nick will have to learn. So, I think it gives a good opportunity, and I think we've got some depth there. If somebody else goes down, then shit, we're starting to look pretty short because, no Ridley down there and now no Reed for a while. If we lost Mackay, I don't know what the hell we'd be doing. Maybe we would start playing Harry Jones at fullback if Ben Mackay goes down.
Yeah, I think it would be Lewis Hayes and Sam Wiedemann. But
jeez,
just on yeah, dire straits down there. I
think I'd rather just Harry Jones at fullback than Sam Wiedemann.
Well,
completely sight unseen with Harry, but I'd just anyway.
Yeah, so with Nick, I thought he had a rough start, but I thought he did pretty good. Like Chol got subbed out
Yeah,
as a
was that because he
tactical
got
sub.
towed out? Was that because he
No,
got towed out,
well,
or
I think it's because Cox was doing a good enough job that they thought they could get the output elsewhere. I don't think he towered Chol up. Chol's had a couple of goals, but he did, I think, a good enough job that around the ground that Hawthorne decided they wanted to go smaller. But uh, you're right. Now is Nick's sort of we've been championing for him to be a defender for a while. Well, now's your spot. He's still very skinny, but we'll see how he goes. And just on the young guys, before we start probably turning our minds to changes next week, it would be remiss of us not to talk about Archie Perkins in a bit more depth. You could make a very strong argument it was his best game for the club. 24 disposals, 2 goals, a couple of really vital centre clearances when the game was in the balance. 12 tackles, which I think just sort of gets lost in it all. Like, it wasn't just the offensive side of it. And I mentioned before he got jogged past a couple of times, but he was putting his body on the line in the clinches defensively. He had 8 clearances, like you said, a couple of goal assists as well. So he was basically involved directly in 4 goals.
so Archie actually had 9 score involvements, so he had more score involvements than anyone on the ground for us.
Yeah. So I'm just talking sort of direct score involvements being a goal or a goal assist. But yeah, 9 score involvements generally. So it does beg the question now of are we limiting him as a half forward? Do we need to carve out midfield time at the expense of someone else? I think there's a legitimate chance we probably need to at this point if he does this again and Parish misses this week.
Yeah, I mean the reality is we're always going to have injuries, though, aren't we? I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
it's good that Setterfield and Caldwell and Merritt and all those boys played on the weekend. Setter's had a really good game, but I think just natural attrition means that you'll always have one or two missing, and at the moment it's Parrish and Shield are obviously missing because Dylan seems to be the forgotten player. Archie, yeah, as you said, he had all those touches. He also had 532 meters gained, which was more than anyone on the ground. He actually only played 79% of game time, which is just insane because for a bloke that came on the ground and really had the 10th least amount of time on the ground, so 12 other blokes on the ground more than him, he outshone them all. And there's a little bit of I think there's a little bit of the old Darcy Parish coming of age type story unfolding in front of our eyes in that there's a lot of conjecture about Darcy early because Darcy came out same as Archie and played to a pretty decent level, not an outstanding level, played to a decent level in his first year. Then just did a slow build, just slowly built up, and each year Darcy year on year got more possessions, more tackles, more everything. Archie's doing the same thing: more touches, more tackles, more marks, more everything. And eventually, you suddenly realise, shit, he's not actually okay. He's actually pretty bloody good, and it just took a little bit of extra time, and that's fine because we always talk about the big guys take time, but every young player takes time. So I think we could be seeing a Darcy like breakout. I don't think he's ever going to get 40 touches in a game like Darcy, but I think if he can be that goal kicking, big bodied midfielder that goes in there like what to be honest, probably like what Jake Stringer. We hope he's like. He might not spend all his time in there, but when he's in there, he's really good. And also that's probably the player we're hoping he sort of turns into a little bit of Jake Stringer with a tank, which I think he's got. So yeah, no, really good on the weekend, and him and I thought just the other one, young bloke. We'll quickly shout out to was Sardis was really good as well. I thought Sardis, when he came on, was excellent. So yeah, really pleasing from the young blokes on the weekend.
Yeah, yeah, and I think now we'll do as well. Turn our eyes to this week. We've all got a bit of time left. So obviously we're playing Sydney this week. Sydney, a couple really strong wins. They've beaten Melbourne. They've beaten Collingwood in successive weeks. Two teams that you'd figure would end up in the top four somewhere this season. Sydney look every bit that sort of team as well. I know you wanted to mention Bonds that we tend to match up historically against them pretty well, particularly up in Sydney. But I reckon this is going to be a tough one. I think if we've got to come ready to play because Sydney will pretty well douse us if we're not.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny, isn't it? Because you think of Sydney and you think, geez, we struggle, or that's always because we think about the Dane Rampy shaking the goalpost and poor old Aaron Francis getting bear hugged in the goal square. No, not was it Francis or was it Hurley? Oh, whoever was it?
Gleason. Gleason.
Gleason, sorry, Gleason. Yeah, I knew it was someone. Bloody hell, my memory's shot to pieces. Gleeson getting bear hugged in the goal scorer, which should have been a free kick, and I'm still enraged about the fact that it wasn't. But yeah, as you noted, we do have a pretty good history. You know, we lost by 2 points last year at Docklands. The year before, 9 points MCG. We got belted last time we played the SCG by 10 goals. That was round 9, 2022. But other than that, lost by 7, lost by 3, won by 6, won by 10, lost by 5. So it's pretty close generally for some reason. I have no idea why these guys struggle against us so much because they, as a football club, leave us for dead. But yeah, they do match up. We do match up well against them, and I think we possibly will again. I think one of the main things probably is their midfield's not huge. So it's a little funny saying it because I mean they had Josh Kennedy as well, but you know Luke Parker and Dan Hanbury going back a little bit. That these guys weren't 6 foot tall mids, were they? So I think we probably don't match up too bad in there. But then obviously no Buddy this year, which thank God we've seen the back of him because Christ Almighty did he take us apart. So
Yeah.
I think we'll match up well. I suppose the big question at the moment is who comes in because yeah, we've lost obviously Guelphy and Reed to
Reed.
injury, and then obviously Mason Redmond has been suspended. I do just quickly want to, and I know you agree with me about Mason Redmond. The whole we should have appealed. We should have. Do
Rubbish.
people actually fuck? Do
Yeah.
people actually read or pay attention to anything outside of the Essendon Football Club? Like seriously, earlier in the week, the AFL were very clear through Laura Kane said, Hewitt got a fine because it was considered to be on the ball football act. Now, I think that's garbage. That's fine, but that's a very clear distinction compared to what Redmond did, which was off the ball. And off the ball was cited during the off season by the AFL as every off the ball incident will be intentional. There's no if buts or maybes. It'll be intentional. So is it intentional? Yes, because the AFL has said every off the ball incident will be intentional. So intentional. Is it low impact? Well, yeah, because he hit him. Someone just said, "Oh, you could argue it's insufficient impact." That's not a thing when it comes to the tribunal. Insufficient impact isn't a thing, and that you either hit him or you don't. And if you hit him, it's low impact. And third thing is he got him high, so he didn't get him anywhere else. He hit him high. Therefore, it's a weak. The whole idea of let's just appeal completely and utterly insane because we'd just be appealing for appeal's sake. And
Yeah.
everyone goes, it doesn't cost us anything. It still costs us money, it costs us time, and it costs us looking like absolute dickheads in front of the AFL.
Yeah, so there's no way you could try and appeal without looking like an idiot, and I'm glad we didn't. I at the time I just shook my head. I knew he was getting suspended just because that was the edict back in February. They cited the Charlie Ballard example against us last year as the example they're looking to stamp out, and I just looked at it and went, "Yep, that's a week. Well,
Yeah.
it's a week. All right, move on." And then I think we've only got a short amount of time left. I just wanted to touch on. I know Buddy's not playing. But this week, their tools, they've got a Marty, they've got McLean, they've got Logan McDonald. Reed's out. We'll bring in Laverty. We've got McKay. Probably play Cox. I don't like that matchup for us, but it's really going to be can the midfield put enough pressure on the ball coming in to make it scrappy? It's a smaller ground, so you'll be able to get help across easier, but it's still going to be a matchup I'm not favourable on. We're going to have to win the clearances, I think, on what is the old cow paddock SCG. It's such a small ground. You win the clearances, you probably go 70% of the way to winning. So that will be the key, I think, for this one. So we'll go move to I think with Redmond and Reed and Guelph out, I don't imagine we'll see many forced changes. We'll probably unforced changes. Sorry, we'll probably just see the forced changes. What's your predicted score line for this one? Do you see us any chance of getting up, or do you think Sydney wins?
Look, I think we are a chance of winning just purely because I think we still match up. And I probably don't quite share the fear. Well, not the fear, but I probably don't quite share your pessimistic view of how we match up against their forward line. I think McDonald kicked a few Joe the Gooses on the weekend, and Amadi got subbed out. And, yeah, I don't really rate McLean either. So I think we could do all right down there, but we'll wait and see how that unfolds. I think I think we probably do lose, but I wouldn't say we're without a chance. And I would say that we'll probably see Sardis coming in for Sardis will probably come in for Guelphy, Hind in for Redmond. As you said,
Laverty for
Laverde, as we
Reed.
said, Laverde for Reed. And look, I would bring Draper in for Jones, but we'll wait and see if he's fit.
Yeah. And I think, Hobbs might make it as a sub in that scenario, considering he played pretty well on the weekend. I'm tipping Sydney by 5 goals. I tipped us by 4 goals last week, so I'm on a roll, one in a row. I'll go Essendon. I'll go Sydney by 5 goals. Thank you for listening this week. Make sure you like, subscribe, and tell your Essendon supporting mate. And as always, go Bombers.